Holocaust who had regathered in Jerusalem to share their experiences and rediscover lost friendships. Now, I had visited concentration camps in Europe and had heard stories of the Holocaust before, and I thought I was beyond shocking by further tales of horror. But as I viewed these interviews, I found that I was not. One woman, for example, told of how she was incarcerated at Auschwitz and was forced, because she was a nurse, to become the gynecologist at Auschwitz. She noticed that Dr. Mengele housed all of the pregnant women together in a certain barracks, and some time passed and she no longer saw any of these women. She made inquiries. What happened to the women who were housed in that barracks? "Oh, haven't you heard?" came the reply. "Dr. Mengele used them for vivisection." A rabbi told the story of a woman at the camp who had a small infant. Dr. Mengele wanted to conduct experiments to see how long an infant could survive without nourishment. And so he had this woman's breasts bound up so that she couldn't suckle her baby. And every day the baby lost weight, which was eagerly monitored by Dr. Mengele. Desperately, this poor woman tried to keep the baby alive by feeding it bits of bread soaked in coffee, but all to no avail. Every day the baby lost weight, and each day Dr. Mengele weighed the baby to check its decline. Then a nurse came secretly to this woman and said, "I've brought a morphine injection for you to kill your baby, and you can get out of this place. I've arranged a way of escape for you, but you can't bring the baby with you." The woman protested. "I can't kill my own child." She said, "Look, the baby is going to die anyway. At least save yourself." And so this mother felt compelled to take the life of her own infant. My heart was torn as I heard these stories. The rabbi at Auschwitz said that it was as though there existed a world in which all of the 10 Commandments were reversed. Thou shalt lie, thou shalt kill, thou shalt steal. Mankind has never seen such a hell. And yet, in a real sense, if God does not exist, then our world is Auschwitz. There is no ultimate right and wrong. All things are permitted. But no atheist, no agnostic can live consistently and happily within the framework of such a worldview. Finally, let's look at the problem of purpose in life. The only way that most people who deny purpose in life manage to live happily is either by making up some purpose for their life, which amounts to self-delusion, as we saw with Sartre, or else by not carrying out their views to its logical conclusions. For example, take the problem of death. According to the psychologist Ernst Bloch, the only way modern man lives in the face of death is by subconsciously borrowing the belief in immortality which his forefathers held to, even though he himself has no basis for this belief, since he does not believe in God. Bloch concludes, thus, this quite shallow courage feasts on a borrowed credit card. It lives from earlier hopes and the support they had once provided. But modern man no longer has any right to that support, since he rejects God. But in order to live purposefully in the face of death, he makes a leap of faith to affirm a reason for living. We often find the same inconsistency among those who say that man and the universe came to exist for no purpose, but just by chance. For example, feminists have raised a storm of protest over Freudian sexual psychology because they say it's chauvinistic and degrading to women. And some psychologists knuckled under and revised their theories. Now, this is totally inconsistent. If Freudian psychology is really true, then it doesn't matter if it's degrading to women. You can't change the truth because you don't like what it leads to. But people cannot live consistently and happily in a world in which other people are devalued. But if God does not exist, then nobody has any value. Only if God exists can one consistently support women's rights. For if God does not exist, then natural selection dictates that the male of the species is the dominant and aggressive one. Women would have no more rights than a female goat or a chicken has rights. In nature, whatever is right. But who can live with such a view? Apparently not even Freudian psychologists, who revise their theories when pushed to their logical conclusions. Or take the sociological behaviorism of a man like B.F. Skinner. This view leads to the sort of society envisioned by George Orwell in 1984, where the government controls and programs the thought of everybody. If Pavlov's dog can be made to salivate when a bell rings, then so can a human being. And if Skinner's theories are right, there can be no moral objection to treating people like the rats in Skinner's rat box as they run through their mazes, coaxed on by food and electric shocks. According to Skinner, all of our actions are programmed anyway, and if God does not exist, then no moral objection can be raised against this kind of programming, for man is not qualitatively different from a rat, for both are just the result of matter plus time plus chance. But again, who can live with such a dehumanizing worldview? Or finally, take the biological determinism of a man like Francis Crick. The logical conclusion is that man is like any other laboratory specimen. The world was horrified when it learned that at camps like Dachau, the Nazis had used prisoners for medical experiments on human beings. But why not? If God does not exist, there can be no objection to using people as human guinea pigs. A memorial at Dachau says, "Nie wieder," never again. But this sort of thing continued to go on. It was recently revealed that in the United States, after the war, various persons of minority group status were injected, unknown to them, with a sterilization drug by medical researchers. Mustn't we protest that this is wrong? That people are more than just electrochemical machines? The end of this view is population control, in which the weak and the unwanted are killed off to make room for the strong. But the only way we can consistently protest this view is if God exists. Only if God exists can there be purpose in life. And thus, as one modern writer has said, if God is dead, man is dead too. Man cannot live consistently and happily as though life were without meaning, value, and purpose. The finite world alone is insufficient to maintain a happy and consistent life. But that throws us on to the third and final alternative. And this is to challenge the worldview of modern man, to maintain that God does exist and that life does have meaning, value, and purpose. This is the position of biblical Christianity. Biblical Christianity thus provides the solution to the predicament of modern man. For according to the Christian worldview, God does exist, and life does not end at the grave. And therefore, biblical Christianity provides the two necessary prerequisites for a happy and consistent life: God and immortality. According to the Christian worldview, life does have meaning because mankind is made in the personal image of God, and our destiny is to know God and enjoy Him and His love forever. Life has value because God's own holy and righteous nature is the absolute standard of right and wrong, good and evil. And that nature is expressed toward us in the form of His divine commandments, which constitute for us our moral duties. And thus the moral choices we make now in this life are filled with an eternal significance. Finally, life has purpose. As the Westminster Catechism says, the end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. And thus, biblical Christianity succeeds precisely where atheism breaks down. The cosmic orphan can come home. Now, I want to make it clear that none of this tonight proves that biblical Christianity is true. But I think that it does clearly spell out the alternatives before us. If God does not exist, then life is futile. If the God of the Bible does exist, then life is meaningful. Only the second of these two alternatives enables us to live a happy and consistent life. And therefore, it seems to me that even if the evidence for and against these two alternatives were absolutely equal, that the rational thing to do is to believe in God. That is to say, it seems to me that if the evidence is equal, that it is positively irrational to prefer death, futility, and destruction to life, meaningfulness, and happiness. As Pascal has written, we have nothing to lose and infinity to gain.